The massive crystal hall stretched as far as eyes could see, with walls that sparkled like diamonds under thousands of floating lights. The Galactic Council Chamber was the most important place in the known universe, where decisions that affected billions of lives were made. Every single day something was different. Hundreds of alien beings filled the enormous space. Their forms were strange and wonderful. Some looked like giant insects with shining shells, others resembled living rocks that glowed with inner fire. There were creatures made of pure energy floating in special containers, and beings so tall they had to bend down to fit under the high ceiling. All of them were staring at one small figure standing in the center of the hall. Captain Park Woo-jin looked very ordinary compared to the incredible aliens around him. He wore a simple blue uniform with a few badges, and his black hair was cut short. His ship had arrived just 3 days ago at the Council capital world, bringing news that shook the entire galactic government. The human captain stood straight and calm, even though thousands of the most powerful beings in the galaxy were watching him. His dark eyes showed no fear, only quiet confidence that made many council members feel uncomfortable. High above on golden thrones sat the 12 supreme counselors who had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were the oldest and most powerful beings alive, and they did not like what they were hearing. Vextar was the largest of them all. His body was covered in black scales that looked like metal armor, and he had 6 massive arms, each ending in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. His red eyes glowed as he leaned forward on his throne. Human, he said in a voice that sounded like thunder, you do not understand what you face. We have ruled this galaxy longer than your entire species has existed. Your people are nothing but children who just learned to walk among the stars. Park Woo-jin smiled, and somehow that simple expression seemed more dangerous than any weapon. The council members had seen many enemies over the centuries. Warriors who roared and threatened, diplomats who begged and pleaded, conquerors who demanded and commanded, but they had never seen someone who smiled like this human did with respect. Counselor Park Woo-jin replied in perfect galactic standard language, I think you are the ones who do not understand. A low murmur ran through the chamber. Many aliens had never heard anyone speak to a supreme counselor like this. The council had destroyed entire civilizations for showing less disrespect. Behind the human captain, Lieutenant Kim So-yang stepped forward. She was smaller than her captain, with long black hair tied back in a neat style. She activated a small device in her hand, and suddenly the air around them filled with holographic displays. The images showed star maps with thousands of points of light, fleet positions with ships counted in the hundreds of thousands, battle reports that made even the most experienced military officers gasp in shock, trade agreements between dozens of species, resource-sharing programs that spanned multiple star systems. The council members stared at the displays in growing alarm. These were not the records of a single small planet that had just discovered space travel. These were the records of a vast alliance that had been growing in secret for decades. You see, Park Woo-jin continued, his voice carrying clearly through the huge chamber. While you were busy ruling through fear, we were busy making friends, real friends. The kind who choose to stand with you not because they have to, but because they want to. The holographic displays changed to show something even more shocking: fleet formations, where human ships flew alongside vessels from species the council had never seen work together. Keth mining barges had been converted into warships bristling with new weapons. Ilani trade ships now carried advanced shields and defensive systems. Drak battlecruisers flew in perfect formation with human destroyers, but the numbers were what made the council members shift nervously in their seats. The human alliance did not have just a few dozen ships, they had hundreds of thousands, all working together with coordination. The galaxy had never seen Counselor Hishra, whose spider-like species was famous for their ability to plan and strategize, studied the displays with growing worry. Her 8-day eyes moved rapidly as she calculated fleet strengths and tactical positions. This is impossible, she said in her clicking voice. Our intelligence reports show your species only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. How could you have? They've built such a massive force so quickly. Lieutenant Kim So-young answered with clear pride in her voice. Because we do not build only for ourselves. When the Keth showed us how to mine asteroid fields more efficiently, we shared our manufacturing techniques with them. When the Ilani taught us their secret trade routes, we helped them build better and faster ships. When the Drak shared their ancient warrior traditions, we trained together as equals. Work together, whispered Counselor, more than a being made of living crystal whose voice sounded like wind chimes. The concept seemed strange and foreign to him. We do more than work together, Park Woo-jin replied. We grow together. Every species we meet makes all of us stronger. That is something your council never learned how to do. The chamber fell silent as the meaning of his words sank in. The Galactic Council had ruled for 3,000 years by keeping species separate and weak. They divided potential allies and conquered them one by one. They made sure no species could become strong enough to challenge their authority. But humanity had done the exact opposite. They built something the galaxy had never seen before, a true alliance based on mutual respect and shared strength. Instead of conquering other species, they had befriended them. Instead of taking their resources, they had shared their own knowledge. Instead of ruling over them, they had chosen to work beside them as equals. The displays showed the results of this philosophy. Keth engineering combined with human innovation had created mining techniques that were 10 times more efficient. Illini trade networks enhanced with human logistics could move goods across the galaxy in record time. Drac warrior skills merged with human tactics had produced military strategies that no single species could have developed alone. Now this alliance stood at the council doorstep, not asking for permission, but announcing their presence as equals who deserved respect. Li Donghuan appeared on one of the communication screens. His weathered face showed the experience of someone who had spent decades in space, but his eyes were kind and patient. Honorable counselors, he said with a slight bow, we have not come here to make war, we came to make peace, but we will not accept the same treatment you have given to so many others. We will not bow down, and we will not be ruled by fear. The council members looked at each other with growing unease. For 3,000 years their word had been law, their fleets had been unstoppable, their authority had been absolute, but now they faced something they had never encountered before. An opponent who was not afraid of them, an alliance that was strong enough to stand against them. A group of species who had chosen cooperation over conquest was supreme. Counselor Thane Dar, the oldest and most powerful being in the chamber, slowly rose from his throne. His ancient form was surrounded by crackling energy that showed his immense power. Human, he said in a voice that had commanded galaxies, you speak of friendship and cooperation as if they were strengths. But we have seen what happens when species are allowed to grow to powerful chaos, war, destruction. That is why the council exists. That is why we maintain order. Park Wu Jin looked up at the ancient being without flinching. Counselor, with respect, you have not maintained order. You have maintained control. There is a difference. Order comes from justice and cooperation. Control comes from fear and oppression. Your council has chosen control, and that is why so many species have chosen to stand with us instead of with youth. Human captain gestured to the holographic displays, showing testimonies from hundreds of species that had joined the human alliance. Their stories were all similar. They had tried to work within the council system but had been ignored, oppressed, or exploited. Instead, they had found hope and opportunity with humanity. We offer you a choice. Park Wu Jin said, his voice calm but firm. Join us in building something better. Accept that the age of ruling through fear is over. Help us create a galaxy where all species can grow and prosper together. Or he paused and his expression became serious. Continue down the path you have chosen and face the consequences. The threat was not spoken with anger or hatred. It was delivered like a simple statement of fact. The council could choose cooperation or they could choose conflict, but they could no longer choose to ignore this new alliance that had grown strong enough to challenge their ancient authority. The chamber remained silent as the most powerful beings in the galaxy realized that their age of absolute control was coming to an end. Humans and their allies were not just another rebellion to be crushed. They were something entirely new, a force built on principles the council had forgotten. A strength that came not from fear but from friendship, and they were too mighty to be ignored. 3 long days passed in the crystal halls of the Galactic Council while humans and aliens tried to find agreement. The council members sat in their golden thrones, speaking in voices that had commanded the galaxy for thousands of years, but their words were the same as always. Submit to our authority, bow to our rule, accept your place beneath us. Humans listened patiently to every demand and rejected them all politely but firmly. Captain Park Wu Jin and his team never raised their voices or showed anger. They simply repeated the same message over and over. We come as equals. We will be treated as equals. High above in the command center of the massive human flagship, New Harmony, Admiral Li Donghuan watched the negotiations through video screens. His weathered face showed the patience of someone who had dealt with difficult situations many times before, but his dark eyes held a growing determination. The council refuses to listen, he said to his officers. They think we are bluffing. They believe our alliance is weak because we choose cooperation over conquest. Commander Choi Min-ji stood beside her admiral, studying tactical displays that showed both fleets. The council had moved their ships into threatening positions around the human alliance fleet, clearly trying to intimidate them into surrender. Sir, she said quietly, perhaps it is time to show them what cooperation can really accomplish. Admiral Li nodded slowly. He had hoped to avoid this demonstration, but the council left him no choice. Show them the Sol Protocol, he ordered. Commander Choi activated communication systems that connected every ship in the human alliance fleet. Within seconds, what the council had dismissed as a collection of different species, with different technologies, transformed into something that made their military experts stare in shock. The change was incredible to watch. Ships that had been moving in loose formations suddenly snapped into perfect geometric patterns. Keth mining vessels that looked clumsy and slow revealed hidden capabilities as weapon ports opened and defensive systems activated. Illini trade ships that seemed designed only for carrying cargo suddenly bristled with advanced sensors and communication arrays, but it was the coordination that truly shocked the council observers. Every ship in the Alliance fleet began moving like they shared a single mind. Drac warships, known for their aggressive individual fighting styles, now moved in perfect harmony with human tactical plans. Keth engineers provided real-time damage assessments that let damaged ships retreat, while healthy ones moved forward to take their place. Talani navigators used their knowledge of space currents and energy flows to position supply ships exactly where they would be needed before the battle even began. The Council had never seen anything like it. General Mortek, the supreme military commander of all Council forces, stood on the bridge of his massive flagship studying sensor readings that seemed impossible. His four eyes moved rapidly between different displays as he tried to understand what he was. Seeing these numbers cannot be correct, he growled to his staff officers, sent probe ships to scan their weapon systems. Again the probe ships launched, and immediately ran into another surprise. The Alliance fleet did not try to hide their capabilities or keep their technology secret. Instead, they openly shared detailed scans of their weapons, shields, and defensive systems. It was like they wanted the Council to see exactly what they were capable of. The results made General Mortek step backward in shock. The weapons readings showed technology that was not just equal to Council standards but superior in many ways. The Keth, with their deep understanding of materials and mining, had helped humans create armor that could absorb and redirect the most powerful plasma cannons. The Ilani, with their mastery of energy systems, had worked with human engineers to develop power cores that could keep entire fleets running for months without refueling. The Drak, with their warrior traditions, had combined their battle instincts with human strategic thinking to create tactics that could counter any known military doctrine. But more shocking than the individual improvements was how everything worked together. A single Keth mining ship, which should have been one of the weakest vessels in space, suddenly demonstrated firepower that rivaled a Council battle cruiser. But it was not fighting alone. It was connected to every other ship in its squadron, sharing targeting data, power reserves, and defensive capabilities in real time. When Council probe ships fired test shots at the mining vessel, they discovered that attacking one ship meant fighting the entire squadron. The mining ship absorbed damage that should have destroyed it because power flowed to it from Allied vessels nearby. When it returned fire, its weapons were enhanced by targeting data from dozens of other ships. It was not just a mining ship anymore. It was part of a living network that made every vessel strong. Captain Yunhei, one leading a mixed squadron of human and Drak ships, demonstrated their coordination by performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. Ships from different species with completely different designs and capabilities moved together like dancers in perfect rhythm. Each ship covered the weaknesses of its allies while enhancing their strengths. Drak vessels provided aggressive firepower, while human ships offered strategic coordination. Keth's engineering ships kept everyone supplied and repaired, while Ilani scouts provided early warning of any threats. How are they doing this? Counselor Vextar demanded, as he watched the demonstration from his throne. Different species cannot work together like this. Their technologies are not compatible. Their thinking patterns are completely different. Admiral Li Donghuan appeared on the main communication screen, his image calm and confident. That is where you are wrong, Counselor. You see differences where we see opportunities. You see problems where we see solutions. Behind him on the bridge of New Harmony, human officers worked seamlessly alongside beings from a dozen different species. Keth engineers operated beside human technicians, while Ilani navigators coordinated with Drak tactical specialists. They did not just tolerate each other's differences, they celebrated them and used them to become stronger than any single species could be alone. Your Council has ruled through fear for 3,000 years, the Admiral continued. You keep species separate because you are afraid of what they might accomplish together, but we have learned something you never understood. Unity does not mean everyone must be the same. To prove his point, he ordered a combat demonstration that left the Council military experts speechless. A small formation of mixed alliance ships faced off against automated targets designed to simulate Council battle tactics. The results were devastation that came not from superior firepower but from perfect coordination. Ships that should have been destroyed by the first enemy salvo absorbed incredible damage and kept fighting. Supported by power and shields shared from their allies, attacks that should have been devastating were intercepted by defensive networks that reacted faster than any single crew could manage. Strategies that had worked for the Council for thousands of years suddenly became useless against an enemy that adapted and evolved in real time. But perhaps most disturbing to the Council observers was the attitude of the Alliance crews. They were not fighting with the desperate fury of rebels trying to overthrow their oppressors. They were not fighting with the cold calculation of conquerors seeking to expand their territory. They were fighting with the quiet confidence of people who knew they were protecting something precious. They were fighting for each other. The demonstration continued for hours, with the Alliance fleet showing capabilities that broke every rule. The Council thought they knew about space warfare. Ships that should have run out of power kept fighting, supplied by mobile energy platforms. Ships that should have been overwhelmed by superior numbers turned the tables using tactics that no single species had ever developed. Most shocking of all was how the Alliance treated damaged Council probe ships. Instead of destroying them, they disabled them carefully and then offered medical aid to any injured crews. It was mercy shown to enemies, which was something the Council had not seen in centuries. As the demonstration finally ended and the Alliance fleet returned to defensive positions, the Council chamber fell into stunned silence. For the first time in 3,000 years, they faced an opponent they could not simply overwhelm with superior numbers or more advanced technology. They faced an opponent that was genuinely better than them. General Mortek stood on his bridge, staring at tactical displays that showed the true scope of what they faced. The Alliance had not just demonstrated superior coordination and technology, they had shown that their way of doing Things produced better results than anything the Council had achieved. Captain Park Woo Jin appeared on communication screens throughout the Council fleet, but he was not gloating over their successful demonstration. Instead, his expression was sad and concerned. "We did not want to show you this," he said quietly. "We hoped you would listen to reason and choose cooperation over conflict. But you forced us to prove that our way of building relationships creates strength that conquest never can." Alliance fleet began moving into new positions, not aggressive formations, designed for attack, but defensive arrangements that protected both their own ships and the space around the Council capital. Even now, after demonstrating their overwhelming superiority, they were choosing protection over destruction. It was a choice that shook the Council to its very foundation. The demonstration of human alliance power should have convinced the Galactic Council to change their ways, but pride and fear made them choose a different path. The ancient rulers retreated to their emergency chambers deep inside their crystal palace, where they had made the most important decisions for 3,000 years. Supreme Counselor Thaindar stood at the center of the circular room, his ancient form crackling with energy that showed his immense power around him. The other 11 Supreme Counselors argued and shouted, but their voices all carried the same message: "We cannot allow this challenge to continue." The old counselor raised one hand and silence fell across the chamber. His voice when he spoke was like the sound of stars dying. "If these humans and their pets want to challenge 3 millennia of perfect order, then they will face the full might of the Galactic Council. Mobilize the Grand Fleet." The order that followed would change the galaxy forever. Emergency signals flashed across 200 star systems as the largest military force ever assembled began to move. 5 million warships from every species under Council control received the same command: destroy the human alliance and restore proper order to the galaxy. At the center of this massive fleet was the flagship Dominion's Edge, a vessel so enormous that it made human cities look small. The ship alone carried enough firepower to crack planets in half, and its shields had never been broken in 1,000 years of warfare. General Mortek stood on the bridge of this mighty vessel, studying tactical displays that showed the positions of both fleets. Even he had to admit that the human coordination was impressive, but numbers were numbers. 5 million ships against barely 200,000. The outcome seemed obvious, sir, reported his aide. "The humans are requesting communication again." On the main screen, Admiral Li Donghuan appeared, but this time he was not alone. Captain Park Woo Jin stood beside him, along with Commander Choi Minji and officers from dozens of allied species. They looked tired, but their determination had not wavered. "General Mortek," the Admiral began, "we are offering you one final chance to end this peacefully, to recognize our alliance as equals, agree to fair representation in galactic governance, and we can all move forward together." General Four Eyes narrowed with contempt as he stared at the humans. "You face 5 million warships. Human, your little alliance is impressive, but you are outnumbered 25 to 1. Surrender now, and we might allow your species to serve in our mining operations, instead of destroying you completely." "I was afraid you would say that," Admiral Li Donghuan replied, with genuine sadness in his voice. Captain Park initiate protocol or meet. What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The human alliance fleet suddenly began to change in ways that made Council sensors scream. Warnings that seemed impossible. Ships that the Council had counted as single vessels revealed themselves to be something entirely different. Large human battleships opened like flowers to release dozens of smaller craft that could operate independently or link together for combined operations. Each small ship was piloted by crews trained in both human tactics and the specialized skills of their allied species. Geth mining ships, which had looked clumsy and slow, suddenly opened massive cargo bays to release swarms of automated defense drones. Each drone was controlled by Keth engineering expertise combined with human tactical software, creating a cloud of intelligent defenders that moved like a living creature. Trade vessels revealed their true nature as mobile manufacturing platforms capable of producing new ships, weapons, and supplies during battle itself. The elegant vessels began constructing reinforcements in real time using materials they had gathered from asteroid fields and dead worlds. But the real surprise came from the Drak contingent. The proud warrior species had been unusually quiet during the negotiations, and now the Council learned why. They had been preparing something that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Captain Song Min-ho, leading the Drak Alliance forces, opened communication channels to every ship in the Council fleet. But he was not speaking to the officers or commanders. He was speaking directly to the ordinary crew members, the soldiers and workers who kept the massive ships running. Warriors of the galaxy, his voice carried clearly through universal translators to millions of beings. You fight today for masters who see you as tools to be used and thrown away when broken. But it does not have to be this way. The human alliance offers something your rulers never will: a place where your strength and skills are valued, where you fight beside allies, not under overlords, where your families can live in peace instead of fear. What followed was every dictator's worst nightmare. Ships throughout the massive Council fleet began to hesitate, then turn, then openly switch sides. Not all of them, but enough. The perfect discipline that had held the Grand Fleet together for centuries. We began to crack as individual crews made their own choices. Engineer Min Su Young, coordinating the Alliance communication networks, had spent months secretly contacting oppressed species throughout Council. Space seeds of rebellion had been planted long before the fleets ever met, and now they began to bloom. Some Council captains tried to maintain control by threatening their own crews, but discovered that fear only worked when people had no other choice. The Alliance offered hope, and that was something more powerful than any weapon. This is impossible. General Mortek roared as he watched his tactical displays show friendly ships turning into enemies. Control your vessels, but control was exactly what the Council was losing. The a species of insect-like beings who had been forced to serve as ship technicians for 800 years suddenly took over their vessels' engineering sections. Their deep understanding of how Council ships worked became a devastating advantage. When they chose to use it against their former masters, they had who looked like living crystals and had been treated as decoration on Council ships, revealed that they had been listening to every conversation and recording every secret for decades. They broadcast Council military codes and tactical plans to the Alliance fleet in real time. That Zemek, a species of energy beings who had been imprisoned in special containers to power Council weapons, broke free and began shutting down the most powerful weapons systems throughout the fleet. Ship after ship throughout the Grand Fleet found itself crippled not by enemy fire but by the rebellion of crews who had finally found the courage to say no. The battle that was supposed to crush the human alliance instead became the moment when half the galaxy chose freedom over oppression. As Council ships continued to switch sides or suffer internal rebellions, the mighty Dominion's Edge found itself surrounded not by enemies but by former allies who had chosen a different path. General Mortek watched his overwhelming advantage disappear ship by ship as beings who had served the Council faithfully for generations discovered that there was another way to live. How? He whispered to himself. How did they know exactly what to say to turn our own people against us? Admiral Li Donghuan image appeared on the screen one final time, but his expression was not triumphant. It was sad, like someone who had been forced to break something beautiful. Because we listened, General, while your Council was busy giving orders, we were busy listening to the people those orders affected. Every species has dreams and hopes and desires for something better. We just offered them a chance to achieve those dreams. The Grand Fleet, the largest military force in galactic history, was tearing itself apart from within, and there was nothing the Council could do to stop it. The age of ruling through fear was ending, and it was ending not with conquest but with choice. As the Grand Fleet collapsed around them, the surviving Council members retreated deep beneath their crystal city to emergency bunkers that had been built to withstand planet-cracking weapons. The most powerful beings in the galaxy huddled together in underground chambers like frightened children hiding from a storm. The crystal walls that had once sparkled with the light of 1,000 suns now felt cold and dark. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows as the 12 Supreme Councilors tried to understand how their perfect order had crumbled so quickly. How did this happen? Supreme Councilor Thaindar demanded, his ancient voice cracking with stress and disbelief. We ruled for 3,000 years. Our ancestors conquered entire star systems with weapons that could destroy worlds. How could these newcomers destroy everything we built? For other councilors had no answers. Councilor Vextar, his black scales now dull with exhaustion, slumped in his chair while Councilor Hishra nervously clicked her 8 legs against the floor. The great minds that had controlled galactic civilization for millennia could not understand what had gone wrong. The answer came from someone they never expected. Dr. Kim Jihai, a human scientist who studied the history and cultures of different species, was granted permission to address the Council. Under a flag of truce, she entered the bunker not as a conqueror coming to gloat over victory, but as a teacher hoping to help students understand an important lesson. Your Excellency, she began with genuine respect in her voice, you did not lose because we were stronger. You lost because you forgot something fundamental about intelligence and civilization. She activated a small device that filled the chamber with holographic displays showing the history of the galaxy, but from a perspective the Council had never considered before. It was history seen through the eyes of ordinary people who lived under Council rule. The displays showed how Council policies had changed over thousands of years. At first, the ancient councilors had truly tried to bring peace to a chaotic galaxy. They had stopped wars between species, established safe trade routes, and created stability that allowed civilizations to grow. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. Your ancestors built this council to serve the galaxy. Dr. Kim continued, pointing to images of the early councilors who had worked tirelessly to help struggling species, and for a time that worked well. You stopped conflicts, helped civilizations develop, and created prosperity for billions of beings. A display showed the golden age of early council rule, when different species had been encouraged to share knowledge and work together, when innovation had been celebrated and new ideas had been welcomed, when the council had truly served the people instead of ruling them. But then fear had crept in. You became afraid that if species grew too strong, they might challenge your authority, Dr. Kim explained gently, so you began to limit their growth. You stopped encouraging cooperation between species, you started keeping them separate and weak. The holographic displays showed how council policies had gradually shifted from protection to control trade. Routes that had once connected different civilizations were restricted to prevent species from becoming too friendly. Research projects that might lead to new technologies were shut down if they seemed too dangerous to council. Power species that showed too much independence were punished with economic sanctions or military intervention. You became like the ancient emperors of my world, Dr. Kim said sadly, so focused on keeping power that you forgot why you wanted it in the first place. You stopped serving your people and started ruling them instead. Counselor Vextar leaned forward, his red eyes flickering with confusion. But we brought peace to the galaxy. We prevented wars and chaos. Did you? Dr. Kim asked gently, or did you just hide the chaos under a layer of control? She activated new displays that showed records the Council-owned intelligence services had hidden from them, rebellions that had been crushed before they could spread, scientific discoveries that had been suppressed because they might threaten existing power structures, entire species that had been forced to stop growing because advancement might make them harder to control. The Keth had developed new mining techniques that could have fed the entire galaxy, but the Council had limited their use because it might make the Keth too valuable to other species. That Ilnani had discovered energy sources that could have revolutionized space travel, but their research had been classified and restricted because it might shift the balance of power. Of the Drak had military strategies that could have defended the galaxy from outside threats, but they had been forbidden from sharing them with other species because cooperation might lead to independence. Every advancement, every innovation, every step toward a better galaxy had been stopped because it might threaten Council control. My species learned something important long ago, Dr. Kim continued. True strength does not come from controlling others, it comes from helping others become their best selves. When you lift others up, they lift you up in return. Captain Park Jin entered the chamber, followed by representatives from dozens of species that had once served the Council faithfully, but they did not come as conquerors seeking revenge. They came as concerned neighbors offering help. We do not want to destroy what you built, he said with complete sincerity. We want to help it become what it was always meant. Debating human proposals were shocking in their generosity. Instead of replacing the Council, they wanted to transform it. Instead of punishment for the old leadership, they offered partnership in building something new. Instead of revenge for centuries of oppression, they offered redemption and a chance to start over. But why? Counselor Hishra asked, her strategic mind struggling to understand the logic. You have won completely. You could take everything we own. Why offer us anything at all? Lieutenant Colonel Park Se-jin, a human expert in understanding how different minds worked, answered with a warm smile, because that is not who we are. Our strength comes from building bridges between people, not from burning them down. Every species, including yours, has something valuable to contribute to the galaxy. The revelation that shook the Council members to their very core was not that humans were somehow naturally superior to other species, it was that they had made a conscious choice to be better than their worst impulses. When humans had discovered faster than light travel, they could have used it to build an empire that conquered other worlds. Instead, they had used it to explore and make friends. When they had developed advanced weapons, they could have used them to force other species to obey. Instead, they had used them to protect those who could not protect themselves. When they had gained influence over other species, they could have ruled them like the Council did. Instead, they had chosen to serve alongside them as equals. Your species has the same potential, Dr. Kim assured the stunned Council members, with the same capacity for growth and cooperation and building something beautiful. You just forgot how to use it. As the day wore on, something unprecedented happened in the Council chambers. For the first time in centuries, the ancient rulers began to listen instead of command. They heard stories from species they had barely noticed before. They learned about problems they had never bothered to understand. They discovered possibilities they had never imagined because they had been too focused on maintaining control. The galaxy was about to change in ways that no one, not even the humans, had fully expected. But for the first time in thousands of years, that change would come from hope instead of fear. 6 months after the great battle that changed everything, Captain Park Jin stood on the observation deck of a space station that had been transformed beyond recognition. The old Council command center had been renamed Harmony's Rest and now served as headquarters for something the galaxy had never seen before. Galactic Alliance. Through the massive transparent windows, he could see the most incredible sight in galactic history. Ships from hundreds of different species worked together to build a future that belonged to everyone. Construction teams moved in perfect coordination as beings who had once been enemies now labored side by side. Engineers with their deep understanding of materials worked alongside Ilani designers, whose artistic sense created buildings that celebrated the unique beauty of dozens of different worlds. Drak security forces trained with human marines, not as masters and servants but as equals, learning from each other. Most remarkably, several former Council species had joined the construction efforts with enthusiasm that surprised everyone. Councillor Vextar himself could be seen directing teams of his people as they installed new communication systems that would allow real-time participation from species across the galaxy. It still seems impossible sometimes, said a familiar voice behind him. Captain Park turned to see Admiral Li Donghuan approaching with a relaxed expression that had become common since the fighting ended. The stress lines around his eyes had faded and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew that difficult work was being rewarded with real Progress what seems impossible, Sir Park asked. All of this, the Admiral replied, gesturing toward the construction. Work the fact that we actually convinced them to try something different. 3,000 years of ruling through fear does not disappear overnight, but they are learning, Park observed. They are really trying to change through the windows they could see former council members working alongside species they had once oppressed. The proud Vorth who had been treated as mere technicians were now respected as the engineering experts they had always been. The beautiful Helene who had been used as decorations were recognized as the brilliant strategists. Their crystal minds made them. Even the energy beings called Zemek who had been imprisoned to power council weapons were now free to contribute their unique abilities to projects that helped everyone. Kim Jihai approached them, carrying reports that made her eyes shine with excitement. You need to see these numbers, she said. The innovation rate has increased by 600% in just 6 months. When species started sharing their knowledge freely instead of hoarding it, everything began to accelerate. The results were visible everywhere. Medical techniques that had been suppressed for centuries were now being shared freely, saving millions of lives. Art and music were flourishing. As different cultures began to influence each other openly, even military technology was advancing rapidly, but now it focused on exploration and defense rather than conquest. The most exciting development was happening at the edges of known space, where the old council had built walls to keep other civilizations out. The new alliance was building bridges to welcome them in. There is something else, Dr. Kim added with growing excitement. We have received contact from 5 previously unknown civilizations. Beyond our borders, word is spreading that something new and positive is happening in this part of the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Choi Min-ji joined their group, her face bright with the kind of enthusiasm that came from meaningful work. And the best part is, they are not asking to join us because they are afraid of being conquered. They want to be part of something that makes the Axe Galaxy better. That evening, the first official session of the Galactic Alliance convened. Representatives from over 400 species gathered, not in the cold crystal chambers where the old council had ruled, but in a warm, comfortable meeting space designed to make everyone feel welcome and valued. The agenda was ambitious but achievable, establishing new trade agreements that benefited everyone instead of just the powerful, sharing scientific research freely so that discoveries could help all species, creating joint exploration missions to unknown regions of space, setting up educational exchanges so young beings from different worlds could learn from each other and build friendships that would last for generations. Captain Park Woo-jin, now serving as one of the rotating chairs of the Alliance, called the session to order. Friends, he began, using a word that had rarely been heard in the old council chambers. We are here today, not as rulers and subjects, but as partners in building a better galaxy for all our children. The discussion that followed would have been impossible under the old system. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked together to solve problems that affected everyone. Ideas that had been considered too dangerous to discuss were debated openly and honestly. Plans that would have taken decades to implement under the old bureaucracy were approved and funded in a matter of hours because everyone understood that cooperation made everything faster and better. As the session ended and representatives prepared to return to their home worlds, former Supreme Counselor Thane Dar approached the human delegation. The ancient being looked different now, smaller somehow, but also more alive than he had been in centuries. There was light in his eyes that had been missing for a very long time. Captain Parky said formally, then paused and smiled. Woo-jin, I wanted to thank you, personally thank me. For what? For showing us what we had forgotten. The old counselor replied with genuine gratitude. Power without purpose is just oppression. Authority without service is just tyranny. My species ruled for 3,000 years, but we never built anything that would last beyond our own lifetimes. You have helped us remember how to create instead of just controllers. Captain Park watched the former counselor walk away to join a mixed group of beings discussing plans for a new research station that would benefit the entire galaxy. He felt deep satisfaction. This was what his species did best, not conquering or ruling or forcing others to obey, but inspiring people to become their best selves and then helping them achieve their dreams. The galaxy was still full of challenges. There were unexplored regions that might hold new dangers, old conflicts that would take time and patience to heal. The constant work of maintaining cooperation between hundreds of different species with different needs and perspectives, but for the first time in thousands of years, those challenges would be faced by beings working together rather than against each other. The age of fear and division was ending, and the age of cooperation and shared growth was just beginning. Humanity had indeed proven to be mighty, but not in the way anyone had expected. Their might came not from their weapons or their fleets or their ability to conquer, but from their ability to see the best in others and help them achieve it. The moment the Galactic Council realized humans were too mighty to defeat was the moment they discovered that humans were also too compassionate to destroy them. And in that moment of understanding, the galaxy began to heal from wounds that had festered for millennia. Captain Park Woo-jin prepared to return to Earth. For the first time in 3 years, he carried with him not the spoils of conquest, but something far more valuable than knowledge that his species had found their true purpose among the stars. They were not meant to be rulers or conquerors. They were meant to be teachers and friends and bridges between worlds, and in fulfilling that purpose they who had become truly mighty in the best possible way. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.